to Just A Convo, the podcast where we talk about the things that you don't dare to talk about. And I'm your host, Jonathan Fors, and today I talked to, or rather I spoke to an individual by the name of Douglas Sands, and he is what everybody calls a hypnotist. And if that doesn't intrigue you enough, I don't know what will, but this is for sure a surprisingly deep conversation that we had together. And so without dragging it out any longer, I'll just hope you enjoy the conversation, and I'll see you next time. Through the world of hypnotism, Douglas Sands guides his clients away from stress, mental illnesses, and anxiety. He is also the host of his very own show called Making Meaning, which focuses on the struggles that adventurers and the likes faces in order to inspire others to keep building their own adventurous lives. And today he's come on Just A Convo to share his own story and experiences. And so I have to say a big welcome, Doug.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on, Jonathan.
No worries. Well, so getting straight to the point, I obviously have my assumptions of who you are as an individual, but I would love for you to say in your own words who you are.
Absolutely. My name is Doug Sands. I call myself the adventure hypnotist because I help people who are looking to have that adventurous lifestyle really overcome their fears and step out of their comfort zones. For me, that was my personal story. I grew up in the Midwest in the U.S., and it's very flat. A lot of farmland, a lot of rural area, not a lot of adventure to be had. And so I had my own adventure after I dropped out of college and started bouncing around from seasonal jobs out on the East Coast. There's a lot of mountains out there. I did a lot of hiking and just discovered that there was this whole other side of life that I could be enjoying. And that it was really my first taste of it that just whetted my appetite. And I've been pursuing it ever since. I had a bit of a hang up, a kind of a dangerous hike that made me question everything afterwards. And I discovered meditation, and through meditation, I discovered hypnosis. And what a lot of people don't realize about hypnosis is that it is quite uniquely linked to meditation. Aside from the brainwave patterns, hypnosis and meditation are almost the same. And since then, I've been learning more about hypnosis, and with my clients, I help them mostly with hypnosis, but I also use tools from meditation, from yoga, and from really anywhere that I can find.
You know, as I was reading up on you and reading your website and basically getting to know you and what you do, I had no idea what hypnotism really is. I mean, I've heard of it, and you see it in these amazing videos on YouTube in big stages, and they're doing all kinds of crazy things. But I have no actual idea of how it actually works. But so when I was reading about you, I made up my own mind and my own conclusion that it seems to be, like you say, it seems to be quite similar to meditation. That's my impression that I got, because I quite recently started, not as regular as I want to, but I do meditate sometimes.
Absolutely.
And so getting into that personally, then reading about this, it seems not too different. I mean, I'm sure it is very different, but from an outsider's point of view, it doesn't seem that far off from each other. And so basically getting straight to the point, would you say, or what would you say is the difference between the two? That's a very big question, I know, but...
Yeah, absolutely. So in meditation, I would separate meditation into two categories. There's solo meditation and guided meditation. Solo meditation, what most people don't know is that when you go into solo meditation, your brain is actually operating on a higher frequency than normal. So our normal waking state is at beta, and that's, I think, 20 to 24 hertz frequency. And above that is gamma. That's where we go when we meditate. Our brain is actually more focused, more attentive. But when you're doing guided meditations, your brain actually will go below beta. It'll go into alpha and sometimes theta states. And what most people don't realize is that a lot of guided meditations are really just hypnosis. there are so many similarities in the language patterns. There are so many different crossovers between guided meditation and hypnosis that a lot of times they're indistinguishable. You're getting someone into a very relaxed state. You're giving them positive suggestions. And then at the end, you're bringing them out feeling better than before. And that's literally what hypnosis is. And most people do know hypnosis as that stage show kind of tool. And there's this division in the hypnosis world. It's a pretty small world of people who practice this, but there's people who use it specifically for therapeutic and for change work, and there's specifically people who use it for the stage shows. There are some who do both. And I encourage people, if they're interested in hypnosis, if they're curious about it, I encourage them to look up in their area someone who's called a hypnotherapist or a consulting hypnotist, someone who does this specifically to help with change work, because they have been trained, they have been taught the language patterns that help people get to these deep meditative states so they can make those changes very rapidly.
And you getting into this, because it's not that common, I guess, to be doing hypnotherapy. How did you end up where you are? Because I mean, it's quite a unique path, to say the least.
Yes. I dropped out of college and I went to Maine looking for my purpose. And I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And so that was the reason I left. I was paying thousands of dollars and I was no closer essentially to figure out what I wanted to do. In America, especially, it's really not common to have a gap year. I think had I had a gap year to really figure out what I wanted to do, it would have been a different story. But I went to Maine and then to New Hampshire to work a seasonal job that winter. And things just weren't going very well. And on the third day of 2019, I believe it was, I went out on a hike in a blizzard in New Hampshire. And for anyone who's been in New Hampshire, blizzards get pretty tough because that area is very icy, very chilly all winter long. And I got lost, pretty seriously lost. Oh. And I bushwhacked down this mountain. I had some moments that it was pretty clear if I didn't get myself out, I was going to freeze to death. And that experience really shook me. I mean, I got out of it by myself, but it confirmed my own mortality for the first time. And it really made me question what I wanted to do and why I wanted to do it. And really, I came to meditation kind of as a way to manage my own anxiety. And through meditation, I learned just how much control we actually have over our own emotional states. And with that connection to hypnosis, it was just a natural launching off point. I remember the first day I heard about kind of that connection. I'd never really considered hypnosis before. Like most people, I'd only seen it in a stage show. And so to hear that it can actually make some really cool changes was just, it opened my mind to it. And I started researching it. I started learning more about it. And I was hooked from the moment I started.
Awesome. And I have to ask, what was the purpose of going into that blizzard? Why were you out there to begin with?
Absolutely. I was leaving New Hampshire in 10 days, and it was my last day off before I left to go back home to the Midwest. And in New Hampshire, there's this very famous hike. It's called the Lafayette Ridge. And I really wanted to do it because apparently it's got some beautiful views, like 2 to 3 miles of ridge line with 360-degree views. And I wanted to do it so badly that I just didn't want to miss it. And I got to the top and I couldn't see anything. I literally could not see more than 25 feet in any direction. Oh. I remember coming on these other hikers, and it was as if they would just appear like ghosts out of the cloud, and I'd stop after they'd passed. And within 10 steps, it was as if they'd never existed. That's how thick this was at the top of the mountain.
So cool. Are you big on, do you like going on adventures like that? Or was it kind of a one-off?
Oh, I definitely do enjoy adventuring like that. I'm still very big into hiking. I've learned quite a bit since then. As they say, we go into the wilderness to make mistakes. And thankfully for me, my mistake was not fatal. It was not, it was just dangerous enough to really get my attention. And it really taught me that no matter how skilled I think I am, or how capable I think I am with what I know, the mountain will always win if you test yourself against the mountain. And so I really just gained some respect out of that for outdoor adventuring and for knowing my craft, really.
Right. And you speaking of this makes me think of I love the outdoor life. I love adventuring. I love experiencing life, basically. And recently, or well, with COVID, it's been a while, but I guess it's, how long has it been now? Close to a year, I'm sure. It's well, a while ago, basically. Me and my girlfriend went to France, a place called Mont Blanc, I think it was called. Not the actual mountain, but like an area called that. And so we're gonna go up a quite large and steep mountain, but it's still like a very common road to go. So it's not like you could die on there. But but still, we managed to, or rather I, confident as I am, guided both of us into the completely wrong direction. I looked on Google Maps and was like, well, this seems to be right. And so I followed that path. But sure enough, eventually we realized that, well, I don't think it's normal that the bushes are literally covering the entire path. And so there was no path no more. And so we had to go back down and find the right way up. And as we continued going up this very steep hill, my girlfriend, got more and more tired, and like both of us were kind of cranky because we didn't bring any food or water. We thought, well, this is just a 2-3 hour hike and it's gonna be fine. But since we went the wrong way, it ended up being like 5 or 6 hours. But we ended up getting to the top and down alive, so it's all good. But anyway, it made me think of that. It's you have to respect the nature. So I can't even imagine like you were being lost in like an actual blizzard. Where there's,
oh gosh, and it hasn't really been the last time I've been lost. I shouldn't say like it wasn't like that one experience made me an expert adventurer at all. Just this past spring, my girlfriend and I, we went on this road trip through Arizona and through Utah, out here in the west of the U.S. And we went on this one hike near the end of our trip. And there wasn't really a trail. It was more just a wilderness area. And so we saw a peak that we wanted to go to, and we said, let's just climb up to the top of that. And so we climbed up to the top of that. We knew there were people who had done this before. It had been listed on the trails. It just wasn't officially a trail to speak of. So we got to the top of the mountain, and we're looking around. Beautiful day. And we're like, well, time to head back. And we started going down a different way than we came up. And we got at least halfway down, almost 2/3 of the way down. And this canyon that we're following ended in this 150-foot drop.
Oh.
And so by that time we were low on water. We'd eaten all of our food, and I'd already experienced, some pretty rough stuff in the wilderness, but I think this was my girlfriend's first time getting lost to that extent. And so that was interesting, dealing with the dynamics of that. You really don't know a person until you experience something so, I don't want to say traumatic, but so real and so vivid. We eventually had to hike up back to the peak and then follow our original route down. Very long day and a lot of lessons learned.
Right. But when you go on those hikes, do you bring like an actual physical map, or do you rely on the good old Google Maps?
When I go in New Hampshire, I do have maps. That week we actually didn't, because we were using an app called All Trails, and she had downloaded the map on her phone.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've yet to learn how to use those old physical maps. I mean, I guess I could figure out how to use it, but I've since I guess middle school was the last time I had to use one. So no, it's fun. But jumping from one thing to another, completely switching subjects. like I mentioned in the very beginning, my assumption of how hypnotism actually is these big stage shows where people are doing things they would never even dare to do if they weren't hypnotized. There's that, and then there's hypnotherapy, which I'm sure is very different. Would you say that it's two completely different methods, or is it kind of the same but used in different ways?
Oh, I'd say it's definitely the same, but used in different ways. What most people don't realize about hypnosis stage shows is that the people who are on that stage, they volunteered to be on that stage. And clearly, but that's important because they knew before they went on that stage, they were probably going to do some ridiculous things. And they were basically signing up for that. When someone comes in for a hypnosis session to actually make some change work, they don't expect to bark like a dog or cluck like a chicken or do anything crazy like that. And so they simply don't. When you're working with someone in hypnosis, what you're essentially doing is communicating with their unconscious mind, that part of them that controls their basic functions, essentially, from their heart valves to their liver enzymes, the basics of keeping ourselves alive, but also our emotions, our inner drives. We often picture the mind as something like an iceberg, where our conscious mind is like 5% of what we see above the water, and then our conscious mind is that huge mass that's under the water that we don't consciously know about. And so in a hypnosis session, a consulting hypnosis session, I'm a little bit hesitant to use the word hypnotherapy, because to use hypnotherapy, you technically have to be a licensed therapist. So I call myself a consulting hypnotist. But in a hypnosis session that way, the first thing I do is remove their fears to establish that connection, that this is a modality that we're using for change. It's not something that is mind control. And on that idea of mind control, when you're working with the unconscious mind, its primary motive is to keep you, one, safe, but two, happy. And so if you give a suggestion in hypnosis that violates either of those two things, your unconscious mind will basically shake you out of that trance and say, I don't agree with this. I actually had a hypnosis friend who tried this with their own clients willingly. He had kind of pre-framed this before the session, but he would give them a negative suggestion near the end of their trance, something like, you'll give me $5 after the trance, or you'll tell someone on the street you love them. And every single time, without fail, their unconscious mind just shook them out before before the session ended, because it didn't agree with what was being said. And I really encourage people to just have an open mindset about it in that session, because then we go into it, we relax them, and I give them suggestions. And the suggestions themselves are very important, because we craft those suggestions beforehand. It's not like me. It's not that I tell them what I think would be best on my opinion. It's us crafting together what their suggestion would be like. Let's say someone comes in for anxiety. Well, my definition of anxiety is going to be different than their definition. And so the first at least 10 minutes of the session is just establishing what it is they specifically want to achieve, and then crafting those suggestions in their own language so their unconscious mind really processes it well.
That's so fascinating. So it sounds like, as I understand it, I have no knowledge of it at all, but as I understand it, you speak to, it's kind of the same as you and me speaking, you and I speaking to each other right now, but you're speaking to the client in another level, like on a different subconscious level. Does that make sense? And so just like if a friend, a family member would tell me to go swim in the cold lake, I would probably not do that, not right away at least. And so in the same way, you telling, or this person you talked about telling the client to give him $5, they would never do that. Is it kind of the same? Or?
Kind of, yes. That brings up the idea of rapport. And rapport is all about the trust that a person has with their hypnotist or anyone who's making the change work. Rapport is the kind of being in sync with someone. If you can tell when looking at like a couple or a group of friends on the street, if they're in rapport with each other because they move the same way and they have the same kind of attitude about what's going on, you can really tell if you're in a conversation with someone where you're having rapport because it just feels like it's going well. I should say that it's probably easier to tell when you're not in rapport because the conversation feels stilted and just off in some way that you can't put your finger on. And so to get those suggestions to really work and to make the most of the session, you really have to establish that rapport first. And that's where that first 10, 15 minutes really is so important, not only to show them my human side and what this change work actually does safely and so effectively, but to establish a connection between what they want and what I want for them.
So, yeah, that's I don't know how to word it, but so you kind of like anyone getting to know anyone, you have to feel comfortable with each other. And so I can imagine that it's kind of the same when you have to help a client, and because you're speaking to a stranger in the street, or like if you work in retail, you speak to a bunch of people, but you never actually connect with them on a
Yes.
human level. You say, "Oh, do you want this? Okay, 200 crowns or dollars or whatever currency."
Yeah.
And so just like that, you have to connect and establish some kind of connection and comfort.
I should say that the fact that they're coming in for a session shows that they're willing to change. And the fact that they're coming in shows that they want this change, and so they're willing to connect with someone. It's the same as someone coming into therapy. I have actually done some own therapy in my own life, and I went into that not knowing who this professional was, but within half an hour, I felt very comfortable with them. One, because they're trained how to connect with people like I've been trained, but the client who comes in is expecting to make that connection. A lot of the times, I actually have to kind of make sure we're getting to the point with things, because people come into hypnosis and they think it's the same as a therapy model. Like we talk for most of the session and then we do this quick thing, but I really don't need their whole life story. I just need enough of the pieces to do the work. People are really open and receptive when they come in to these sessions, and that's what I'd say to that.
Okay. And so when you say you don't need to know their whole life story to be able to do your work, doing your work, what is your work? Like, what are you actually doing? More concrete.
Absolutely. So I focus on anxiety relief, and in those sessions, the first 10 minutes learning their story, and then the next 10 minutes roughly when we get into hypnosis, it would be what we call the induction. And for anyone who's seen a stage show, that's when you do the actual hypnosis, I guess what you'd call it. That's when you start relaxing people and you start using these language patterns that have been proven to get people to these alpha states and theta states. And a lot of people think hypnosis is sleep, but it's actually not. It's this state that hovers just above sleep, where your mind is really open to suggestion and open to creative thoughts. And in that session, after we've done the induction, then I start using different tools that I've learned from being trained through different schools of hypnosis. There's something called direct suggestion in hypnosis, and that's literally just giving them suggestion. And then there's a lot of what we call visualization. And what we call visualization, people visualizing their success, that's technically hypnosis. What we would do, there's different techniques, like some that would or guide you through like an art gallery to help you find a problem that perhaps the unconscious mind is hiding from you. Or there's some that imagine a wiser self or a wiser person giving you what you need, even if you don't quite know yet what that gift is. We go through that in the session, and then I usually bring them out of hypnosis with at least 20 minutes or left, because then we talk about what happened in hypnosis, and then I check my work to make sure that the changes have actually happened. And that usually involves either future pacing in a light trance, like going into just a light hypnosis, and then putting themselves in that experiencing, really visualizing it and feeling it. Either that or just doing a second hypnosis session and just checking to make sure that what we've done is not linked to that hypnosis session specifically. And by that I mean, I want to make sure the change leaves with them. I don't want them to be just fixed in the hypnosis room or in the therapy room, whatever you call it. I want to make sure that hypnosis is something that's going to stay and it's going to actually be a permanent part of their life.
And you saying you make the client visualize whatever it is that they want to change or achieve. It makes me think of like motivational speeches or motivational talkers.
Yes.
I mean, there's obviously a huge difference between the two, but would you say that there's some kind of link between the two?
Oh gosh, yes. Yes, there's actually quite a surprising link. A lot of people, at least in America, have heard about Tony Robbins and this really big name motivational speaker. What most people don't realize is that Tony Robbins got his start in hypnosis.
Oh.
He's actually famous for bringing what's called neurolinguistic programming to the business world. And neurolinguistic programming was developed by these two researchers in California, I think in the 1950s, 1960s, named Bandler and Grinder. And Bandler and Grinder studied a bunch of hypnotists and a bunch of different therapists, looking for what was the 20% that got them 80% of their results. And they distilled down their findings to what is now called NLP. And NLP has been distilled in many different ways throughout motivational speaking. And so, yes, there's definitely a huge connection between hypnosis, motivational speaking, and this whole idea of positive psychology.
Okay, yeah, because that makes a lot of sense. Because I think we've all at some point watched a motivational speech and been like really pumped to do whatever it is that you want to do. Like, I'm gonna wake up 5 in the morning, get straight to work, and do whatever it is that I want to do. But then you wake up and you're like, I'll snooze a little bit. And
a speech itself is, in a way, hypnosis. Hypnosis is simply focusing on something to the exclusion of all else. And when you're watching a movie or you're driving a car or doing something where your attention is so focused, let's say watching a movie, your conscious mind isn't registering the fact that the carpet is a certain color or there's a plant in the corner or anything else in the room. Your attention is solely focused on that TV screen. And it's the same with a speech. And your attention is so focused on that speaker that it feels like kind of hypnosis. But it's not quite hypnosis because you're not getting, the full benefits of the suggestion. And so that's why sometimes motivational speeches really stick and sometimes they just kind of fall flat.
Okay, so there's an actual science to it. And you, once again, jumping from one thing to another, you're obviously doing hypnosis for work, but you said that hypnotherapy, to actually call yourself a hypnotherapist, you have to have some kind of like a paper degree, certificate. Yeah, that's what it's called. But so I take it that you don't have that kind of physical paper to show. How have you learned what you know?
I have learned what I know by being certified. I've studied with actually a pretty famous hypnotist. For anyone who knows hypnosis, Mike Mandel out of Toronto is a very famous hypnosis teacher. I've studied with him. I've also studied with other big names in the hypnosis community, like Jason Linett and Melissa Tiers. I've been certified essentially, and most hypnotists, even though they call themselves hypnotherapists, they run that risk of litigation. But most hypnotists don't have that degree of that degree of being a counselor or being a therapist. There are some that do, and there are some counselors who go to hypnosis trainings just to learn more tools to bring to their counseling sessions without calling themselves a hypnotherapist.
Okay. And knowing all that you do, what would you say is the biggest like misconception? Because I obviously, before I talk to you, I still do. I still have a lot of misconceptions and misunderstandings about what hypnotism actually is about. But in your own experience, what would you say is the most common misunderstanding of what it is?
Oh, without a doubt, people believe that hypnosis is mind control. And it's, as I was saying before, the unconscious mind, that's the one doing the trance. Hypnosis is not something I do to people. It's not like a spell I cast over them. Hypnosis is simply me using language patterns to guide them to this place. It's their brain that creates the hypnosis. I'm simply a guide. And so that's the reason that self-hypnosis works, because you don't really need someone to guide you. It just makes the process more efficient and more effective, essentially. And people think that hypnosis is witchcraft or it's not supported by the church. And I throw out some basic facts and figures like that the Catholic Church actually approved hypnosis way back in 1848, I believe it was, well before the American Civil War. And it stands by that claim today. And actually in the 1950s, the current Pope actually recommended hypnosis as a treatment for birthing pains. And hypnosis has been approved by the American Medical Association. It's approved by the National Cancer Institute. It's just an amazing tool, and people are still harboring this idea that it's mind control, that it's the person swinging the pocket watch. And I really just encourage people to research more about what it actually does. Just spend like 5 to 10 minutes on the internet and see what hypnosis can do and what hypnosis can solve besides just the stage shows.
Right. And that's a great segue to something, but I want to first ask, is the pocket watch swinging, is that an actual thing that you could do?
I mean, technically, I've never been taught the pocket watch technique. The pocket watch would probably just be a bit of show to distract their attention while you do these language patterns. I've never seen another hypnotist do the pocket watch trick.
Okay, yeah, I had to ask.
Yeah.
Well, and what you said, it's recognized by the church, the Pope, all different kinds of institutes, and I know it's being used to treat all kinds of different problems, but how can it? For example, let's say that I contacted you to go through a session with you. How could I benefit from your work, basically?
Oh gosh, there's so many different things you can do with hypnosis. The big ones are things like building confidence, removing anxiety. That's what I focus on. There's weight loss, and people think that with weight loss, you just kind of wave the magic hypnosis wand and someone drops 50 pounds. And it's not like that. In weight loss, you are eliminating limiting beliefs that have kept them at that certain weight, and then building the motivation to actually do the things that they need to do. Like, it's still the person going out and exercising and eating right. You're just helping them with the mindset side of that. You can also do things like helping with nail biting, helping with stuttering. Actually, some very big name celebrities like James Earl Jones and Bruce Willis have all used hypnosis for stuttering. Okay. Everyone knows hypnosis helps with smoking. That's the big one that gets advertised.
Right.
Absolutely. And there's just so many different things, from IBS to emotional baggage to different things that our minds control. Anything really that your mind can control, you can use hypnosis on. I won't make the claim that hypnosis is effective for every single thing in the mind, because no tool is 100% effective.
No, of course.
But like cognitive behavioral therapy, hypnosis has been studied and it has been tested, it has been proven, and it can be used in a variety of different ways. It just needs to be applied like a tool, like a hammer. Like, if you try to use a hammer to screw in a nail, it's not going to do that. But a hammer can do quite a lot for you, and it can help you build a house.
Of course. And that's a great saying, by the way. Um, but what is the most common reason people contact you?
I would say anxiety relief. Well, I advertise for anxiety relief, so that's number one for sure. But out of the blue, I would say weight loss and smoking. I personally don't do smoking relief because I find that people who come in, who sign up for the session, are in one frame of mind, and then when they actually get into the session, they're in another. When they sign up, they're like, I'm going to quit smoking, and I'm ready to make this change. And then when they finally get to the session, they're thinking, well, I kind of like smoking. I'll see what happens. They're not quite in that motivated state. I also see a lot of people who are coming in for insomnia, especially this time of year. It's winter time over here, and I'm sure over in Sweden.
Yeah.
And it is another big thing. I mean, a lot of times it's linked to anxiety, and so it has natural crossovers, but insomnia as well.
Right. And after a few sessions or one session, do you usually manage to help your clients, successfully help them, or is it
I
kind of
usually
50-50?
manage to make changes in the first session. It's not, like I said, it's not waving the magic hypnosis wand. I usually tell my clients that we always sign up for a 2-session program. And if we get to the end of the second session and everything's solved, perfect. That's absolutely great. I offer them, if we're still working on this, we can sign up for more sessions and book more appointments in the future. But hypnosis is all about breaking things down into achievable stepping stones. And if you're trying to tackle something huge like weight loss or anxiety, if you go at it like just taking it whole hog, you're going to make changes for sure, but you're going to be shooting from the hip. You're not going to be focused enough to actually make concerted changes. And so let's say someone was coming in for anxiety relief and they signed up for a 2-session program. The first session would be about removing their limiting beliefs and really digging up that underlying framework that they've learned from life and from their different coping mechanisms, tearing up all that, and then perhaps giving them some beneficial suggestions so that, in between sessions, they don't have any panic attacks or any recurrences. And then the next session would be about building up the confidence and building up these new resources, these new coping mechanisms, so that going forward, they don't run into this problem again.
Right. And is tearing apart old systems and old ways and old beliefs sounds a lot to me like traditional talk therapy. And like we've been saying before, I'm sure there's a lot of crossovers with a lot of different things. Of course, like nothing is only one thing. But so how do you distinguish between like going to a traditional therapist and just talk it out and going to a hypnotherapist or someone like you?
Absolutely. A therapist, you go there and you talk about the problems. A hypnotist, you go there, you identify the problems, and then you make unconscious changes to fix those problems. The unconscious is incredibly powerful at fixing itself. And when you're in therapy, you're essentially trying to fix the unconscious consciously by just talking about it. And it's effective for a lot of people. It was effective for me at that time. But there are different ways of going about that. When you're working in therapy, you are essentially reliving the problem, and that alone can be beneficial. But if you're reliving something like a phobia or a fear, things that are commonly very effective with hypnosis, if you just relive that again and again, you're only cementing that in. And so I have studied some psychology. It's been a passion of mine. And so I've got kind of this framework. I know kind of why I know why some of these things develop, and I know some of our coping mechanisms for these things. I wouldn't say that I am at all qualified as a therapist, but I have found I know enough to help my clients achieve what they need to do. And I would say the link between therapy and hypnosis is that we are identify in both sessions. We identify what the problem is, and then we work through them with different tools. In therapy, it's talking about them. In hypnosis, it's the relaxation and the suggestions.
That's interesting. And talking about problems all the way from smoking, anxiety, stress, trauma, whatever it is, would you say that if the person is willing to, is it possible to help or be a helping hand in solving any kind of personal problem?
Absolutely. If not by solving, by attacking the problem directly, you can help someone with their motivation to change. You can help someone with their belief that change is possible. I always tell my clients that change is easy when you are at a certain point. It's a point we call threshold. And it's when you can congruently say to yourself 3 things. 1, change needs to happen. 2, it needs to be me that makes the change. And 3, that change needs to happen right now. It's the reason that someone who finds out they're pregnant can stop drinking at that instant, or someone who is about to become a father or have another life major change can stop smoking cold turkey without ever having a relapse or anything. When someone is ready to make that change, all you have to do is give them the tools. And so that's really what I do in hypnosis. I make sure they're ready to change, and then I give them the tools, and then from then on, it's very easy, no matter what the problem is.
It's very fascinating thinking about how it can help so many different individuals, because there's obviously a lot of people around the globe with a lot of problems.
Yes.
And most often people don't really look towards, well, traditional therapy, hypnotherapy, it's kind of taboo to go to talk to someone professional. It's like you're weak if you do it. Do you recognize these beliefs in your own clients too? Are they kind of shy about it at first, or yeah, they are?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. The first time someone comes in for hypnosis, they're very wary. They're thinking I'm going to, fake them out or something. And it's all about establishing that trust in yourself as a hypnotherapist or hypnotist. And I definitely agree on the stigma kind of thing. In America, I don't know about in Europe, but there's this huge stigma about mental health. And it's been lightening in recent years. We've been focusing more on mental health. And I really hope that out of this COVID situation, when a lot of people are having to face their own issues, oftentimes without help, I really hope that people realize that mental health is so critical. It's so important. Therapy has been coming into the light. It's becoming more popular. And I think eventually hypnosis is going to follow in that tracks. I think it's very interesting that meditation, which is essentially self-hypnosis or this hypnosis into just a relaxed state, a focused state. I think that's so interesting that it's been studied and kind of really accepted by the mainstream culture. And hypnosis, which is similarly effective, has still just been lagging behind like centuries, still in the dark ages, essentially.
Right. And why do you... Because mental therapy in any kind of way is, like you say, there's a stigma around it. And although the year is 2020, and I feel like we should have come a lot further than we actually have.
Yeah.
And it is moving in the right direction, I think, at least here in Sweden and Europe. But I mean, just looking towards Asia, I think they've done a lot more progress in terms of alternative medicine and all these kinds of therapies. Why do you think that there is why do you think that there's it's so hard to accept that these alternative therapies can actually work for so many people?
Gosh. I think here in the West, I should say, and at least in America, that's my experience. People don't like to admit that they have a problem. People, whether it's gambling, whether it's smoking, whether it's just eating too much, or just whatever their problem is, they don't like to admit that they have that problem because they think that weakness is such a limiting thing. I think it's, especially in this extrovert-driven culture, there's not a lot of emphasis on diving into yourself and learning more about yourself. I think I can't say too much about Asia and the East and just how connected they are with these alternative therapies, but I do think they are much more open to them. And I've learned quite a bit. Some of the tools that I give my anxiety relief clients to help manage their anxiety between sessions, they're things like Jin Shinjutsu, things like acupressure, these tools that come from the East, where they've been studied for hundreds of years, and they've been proven effective because they're willing to look at that. I don't know if it's because a lot of their cultures are more focused on the family unit and like the country as a whole. We're more individualistic over here. And I think being individualistic, you cannot show weakness, or people think you can't. Because if you're just a lone individual, that lone wolf, and you show weakness out in primal nature, that's pretty dangerous for you.
Yeah, definitely. And me personally, growing up, I've always been quite naturally fascinated or interested by alternative kind of treatments, and I think a lot of it has to do with my mom doing something called, in Swedish, I have no idea what it's called in English, but craniosacral therapy.
Gotcha.
It's a word. And basically what it is, she works with the energies of the body. She has her clients laying on a, what is it called, kind of a massage stool, yeah. And she don't actually touch her clients, but she has like her hand slightly above the skin of the client, and works with the energies of the bodies. Don't ask how, I don't know. But she does real actual change, and like it can be like bodybuilders that have gone to what is it called? The people that crack your muscles into place. The
chiropractors?
Yeah, right. Thank you. Yeah, they go to those kind of therapies, and it works for 2 hours, and then it's back to whatever problem they had before. And so like a last effort kind of desperate attempt, they go to people like my mom. And so a funny story about that is, one bodybuilder had gone to all kinds of different treatments, and nothing ever worked. And he had done that for, I think he said, like over 10 years. And he was this big pumped up guy, and like could barely move his back and arms, but he was big. And so he went to this craniosacral therapy session, and immediately he was very like, I don't really trust this. Like, is this actually gonna bring any kind of change? Like, you're not even touching me. And so they did the treatment. Nothing happened immediately, of course. But then the day after, the guy called back and said, "I'm really struggling right now. I have such bad diarrhea. I can't walk anywhere. It's pouring out." And and like that can be you can interpret that as you want. Like it can be a very bad thing for the moment, but eventually, I think it was like 2-3 days afterwards, the guy called back again and said, "I can't believe it. I can actually move without it hurting. Like I feel amazing. And there's no more diarrhea, and I feel great. I haven't felt this great in over 10 years." And so it obviously does bring change, but still this person at the beginning were so skeptical and like, I don't really believe this. Like, it's not actually gonna work. And so I think it's a shame that people aren't as open to new kind of ways.
Yeah, I definitely experienced that as well. And I can't say for sure, but I think in America we call that Reiki, working with energy. Can't say for sure because I've never actually experienced it. But when people come to me for hypnosis, it's usually a last-ditch effort. They're like, I've tried everything from medications to therapy to yoga to meditation, and I'm their last stop because they're finally willing to, put themselves at that level and make that change. And at first, I was a little insulted by that, but then I realized just how powerful that is for me, because if I'm their last stop, that means that the change is going to be very easy to do. They're desperate for that change, and their unconscious mind is already ready and primed to make that change.
Right, that's true. Yeah, then they're already prepared. You don't. I mean, I'm sure there's of course a lot of work behind it still, but like they're it's basically just okay, let's do the change, and it's gonna happen.
Absolutely, yeah.
And looking at the time, I want to end it on a interesting or a funny note. I'm sure you've been in touch with a lot of different individuals for a lot of different reasons and problems. Do you have any kind of funny or like really odd client or story that you've experienced?
Yeah, I do. Of course, because of HIPAA and client confidentiality, I'll change
of course.
Names and basic information. But I had this client who was coming in for it was anxiety. They signed up to do an anxiety session, but I found out they actually had more so a fear of dogs because of something that had happened in their childhood. And they were doing this in their home. So when I do therapy or hypnosis, I do it completely online. I do it over Zoom, and it's great because people are comfortable in their own home. They're in that relaxed state, but they are also prone to different distractions. And this happened on this session because we were right in the middle of this hypnosis session. I was working with all these phobia techniques about dogs, and I could see this person beginning to change. And at that moment, I heard like this loud thump, like a door closing outside. And then I heard like a dog's claws on like wood outside the door. And this dog, it was like a medium-sized dog, burst through the door and jumped in this guy's lap. Oh. And he's still in hypnosis. Like, I thought that would just shake him out. But he sat there as this dog is licking his face, and he's like slumped over in that really relaxed posture that people know. And I think that's when I realized like the change had already happened, because had he still been terrified of dogs, he would have been flying from the room. And he told me right after the session that he was so thankful. He hadn't realized that his sister was coming over, and his sister had just got a new dog. And I hadn't realized that was the impetus for actually doing this change, because he wanted to meet this dog. Right. And the sister showed up early. And I think it was just a very, very unique instance of timing that I'm very thankful that it wasn't a little bit earlier, and I'm thankful we made the change before it happened.
That's such a funny story, and I can't even imagine the look or the scene you must have seen when the dog jumping into the lap and all. Well, the time is ticking. Clock is ticking, and although we don't have the pocket watch ticking, it's still keep on going. And so I want to give you a little space to promote anything and everything you have, website, anything Absolutely. You feel like.
Absolutely. So again, my name is Doug Sands. I'm the adventure hypnotist. I run Anywhere Hypnosis, and my ideal focus is working on anxiety relief with people who want to live that adventurous life. But I do all kinds of anxiety relief. That's what I specialize in. For anyone who's never tried hypnosis before, I encourage you to go over to my Instagram page, because every single Friday I release like this 10 to 15-minute session. I call it Free Hypnosis Fridays. And I give out actual techniques, actual tools that I use in these hypnosis sessions. This isn't just me doing some guided meditation or just relaxation. These are actually about making changes in your life. And the first one was on anxiety relief. And I've done others on ending limiting beliefs, managing food cravings, things that I've been taught and I've just been interested to practice a little more. You can check that out. My handle is @makingyourmeaning. There's a bunch of them there. And my other tool for people who are looking for anxiety relief, I have a tool on my website called the 7-Day Stress-Free Challenge. And those are the 7 most popular tools that I give my paying anti-anxiety clients. These tools, I give them to help them manage anxiety between sessions. And these tools sometimes are used by, high-ranking people, from C office executives to public speakers and all these people, because they are so effective and they're so rapid. They come from hypnosis, they come from psychology, they come from acupressure and more. I would say check that out, because you can learn these techniques in about under 5 minutes for each of them. And they're very powerful. Absolutely.
Awesome. And the person listening to this will, of course, find all the links in the description to get in touch with you. And so with that said, I have to say a big thanks for wanting to speak with me and share your thoughts.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Jonathan. I forgot one more thing in the in that kind of promo, the Making Meaning podcast. For those who are interested, I share some of those techniques that hypnosis is all about, but it's more so interviewing top adventurers and learning their stories. Because when I was adventuring and getting that start and first breaking out of my comfort zone, I saw these top adventurers, people who were climbing mountains and doing these great expeditions, and I thought there was this insurmountable gap. My mission in that podcast is really to break down that barrier and show them that, one, they've overcome a lot of struggles in their own life, but 2, they're still growing and expanding. So that's my pitch for that. And Jonathan, I really do appreciate coming on this podcast as well.
Thank you.